Math is math. Math does not care about your feelings. Math does not care whether you can afford it or not. We're here to help you with that. And if you like that, or that resonates with you, like and subscribe to this channel because that's what we're all about. Hey guys, Jared the HOA Crusader here, coming back to you again with another piece of content. Sometimes I like to just talk about things that I experience in day-to-day of doing this job. And recently we took over a small association, only 14 units, but they were really desperate for help and they were willing to pay us well to do that. They just really needed support. And so we came in, and it's not a super high-end area and these aren't super high-end units, but they have a really responsible board at this current moment, and they realize they haven't been doing things right for a long time, and they kind of hired us to come in and help them fix it. One of the big things that we all were on the same page of when we took over was the issue of their HOA dues. And a lot of people really like to focus on, can I get a spot that has super low HOA dues? They're looking for low HOA dues because they think that that's inherently valuable, because they just look at, that's less money I have to pay a month for where I live. But with HOAs, it's not that simple. It might not just be how much you're paying a month for where you live. It could be how much is your HOA putting away for emergency expenses and future repairs. So this particular association, their dues have been like $175 for like the last 15 years. And everywhere else in this town, it's up to like $300, $320, $350 for an association of this similar kind of structure. And the smaller the association, the less advantage you have with economies of scale. So just know that the smaller the association, the larger the portion each unit owner is going to have to pay to maintain that structure. A lot of times the really larger structures or large complexes, they have so many people paying into it that their dues can be a little bit lower. But if your association is 20 units or 50 units or 70 units, or this particular one is 14 units, expect that you're gonna have to pay more in HOA dues because the pie is split between less people. Right? So each person has a bigger chunk of the pie that they're gonna have to pay. So the previous board was penny wise, pound foolish. They wanted to save money on everything, and as a result, they didn't want to pay any more than their basic operating expenses. They weren't really putting away for reserves, at least not more than the state minimum requirement. And they weren't doing a reserve study. They weren't looking at the long-term things that are gonna go wrong. So here we are. They've only paid $175 a month for the last 10 to 15 years. And now they need new roofs. And the roofs are gonna cost $45,000, and they don't have the money for it. And there's other stuff, like their expenses have gone up recently as well. And so I think last year before they hired us, they raised their dues to I think $215 or $225, just because they knew they weren't paying enough in dues. A new board came in and they said, hey, we gotta raise the dues. And they tasked me with saying, okay, how much do we really need to put away long-term? And so we started getting them quotes and estimates on different things that they wanted to get done. They don't really have money for much, right? Based on their current dues. Most likely they should be closer to like $300 a month. And we're gonna talk about that at the next budget cycle. However, they need a new roof. And fortunately, they have like $30,000 in their reserve account. Now, here's the thing. They can't wipe out their entire reserve account to buy this roof or to pay for this roof. They need to leave a good buffer in there because you never know what can happen. You never know the emergency that can come down the road. So they said, we're gonna do this. We're gonna take $15,000 out of reserves. I think they have $35,000 reserves. They're gonna take $15,000 out of reserves. They're gonna leave $20,000 in the reserve account for emergencies. And then they're gonna raise the rest of the money by way of a special assessment to the unit owners. And they say, we're gonna do it this way. It's gonna be a one-time special assessment of $1,800. Everybody can pay $1,800. We're giving them a 2 to 3 month heads up, and they can make one payment of $1,800, 2 payments of, I think, $950 or something like that, or 3 payments of $675, right? So they can break it up. They'll pay a little more than the $1,800 over those multiple payments if they do break it up, just because, interest and, that's kind of the right way to do it. There is a cost to the velocity of money. So if you're going to delay payment on something, usually you're going to have to pay more. That said, I got an email from a unit owner and they said, I can barely pay the dues that I have now. And granted, this person's probably they're already on a payment plan. They probably owe the association $1,200, $1,300, and they've been paying it off consistently. But now there's the special assessment, and there's no way I can come up with that $1,800. There's no way I can do it. And my heart goes out to this person. I really try to empathize with people. I understand that everybody's circumstances is different. And that said, the roof needs to be replaced, right? You've got 14 units and the roofs are falling apart. They're 35 years old. You've already had one that's had a major water leak that caused a lot more damage. So I understand that this person can't afford the special assessment, but they also can't afford not to. And the rest of the association can't afford not to. Because what it's gonna lead to is insurance losses, which is gonna lead to a raise in insurance premium or losing their insurance. And eventually that leads to bankruptcy, right? So now this person's stuck in this spot where there's a special assessment that they're now gonna have to figure out how to pay for. They're already behind on their dues, and the dues are probably gonna go up. And the reason why they're in this position is not because of the board today. And it's like, everybody wants to blame the board. They want to blame the management company that's raising the dues, but they're not the problem. They're fixing the problem that was left by the previous regime who didn't increase the dues for 15 years. And while I empathize with this person, how much more valuable would it have been to increase the dues by 5% every year for the last 15 years, or 10% for the last year for every 15 years, where this person could have acclimated to the increased dues, and if they just said it's getting too expensive, they have some time to sell their place and move. Now, it's all happening suddenly, and we're having to play catch up because the previous regime didn't do their job and didn't plan for the future. And we look like the bad guys. And this person's sending me an email, you're trying to raise the dues, you're trying to do the special assessment, I can't afford it. And I understand, but it's not an option. It's not something that I subjectively chose to do because I felt like doing it. I just did the math. We got 3 estimates. This was the cheapest quote on the roof. The numbers can only be divided by so many people. Math is math. Math does not care about your feelings. Math does not care whether you can afford it or not. Math does not care any of the other extenuating life circumstances that you have going on. And my job is to do the math and tell you how much this is gonna cost. And then say, we're gonna divide that by 14 and everybody's gotta put in this amount so that we can do it, right? Math dictates the outcome. Your dues are going up one way or the other. If the answer is you can't afford it, then the answer is you can't afford to live there. And I hate to sound heartless. I've heard that said numerous times over the course of the last year. And that's a byproduct of the economy and wages not going up, but expenses ballooning and inflation and all this stuff. And I get it, I understand. I empathize with everybody out there that is experiencing financial hardship as a result of external factors. I get that. But they look at the management company and they look at the board and they almost blame us, saying, you can't do this because if you do this, then I can't afford to live here. We're not doing this. The market is dictating to us what we have to charge, like it's dictating to you how much you have to pay for groceries, right? If the answer is you can't afford to live here, then the answer is you can't afford to live here, right? The answer is you're gonna have to sell your place and find somewhere else to live. And it's not that we don't want you to live there. It's that you're not being able to afford the dues, or you're not being able to come up with the money for the special assessment for a new roof, is now jeopardizing the habitability and well-being of 13 other unit owners who also have a good portion of their life savings invested in these units, right? So it ultimately is a personal responsibility to make sure you can afford to live in the place that you live. And we run into these issues in condos and HOAs because generally they're cheaper than buying a home. And people look at it and they're like, well, I don't have to do maintenance on the outside. And I don't, have the typical costs associated with home maintenance, like roofs and siding and all of this. And that's not true. You have all of those same expenses. You have all of those same costs. They're just split up by a specific number of people. And sometimes you're able to do it at a lower cost than if you owned a standalone home. However, when the money comes due, everyone is depending on each other to come up with the money so that you can do it together. Because if not, you all lose your investment. And interest on business loans are expensive, right? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% to get a loan for a special assessment that you're locked into for 5 years, 10 years. And how much money did you pay in interest over those 5, 10 years? I have an association that we took over. They had a 5.5% interest on a $300,000 loan over 7 years. They've probably paid over $100,000. The whole loan was $300,000. They probably paid close to $100,000 in interest over the term of that loan, which means that that's an extra 20% worth of work that they could have gotten done had they not had to take on that loan. But they had to take on the loan because people didn't plan ahead. And they had to take on the loan because people couldn't come up with the money all at once. And therefore, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're saying, let's kick this can down the road a little bit further. But here's the thing. When you get to that point a little bit further down the road, your life is probably going to be harder than it is today. If we look at the general trend of the economy, to say, we'll worry about it in 5 years or 10 years or whenever the future date is that you want to worry about it, the reality is life's going to be harder, the economy's probably going to be worse, and it's going to be even harder to come up with the money then. And so now you're just robbing your future self of, more peace of mind and causing yourself more anxiety and more trouble, right? And so I hate to be the voice of reason here. And I hate to be just the analytical, factual numbers guy. I generally pride myself on being able to speak to people's emotions and really engage with people and understand where they're at and try to help them get to where they need to be. But a lot of times we inherit these bad situations, and I just have to look at the numbers and say, this is what we need to do. And I'm sorry if you can't afford to live here anymore, but I can't jeopardize the well-being of all your neighbors because you can't afford the dues or you can't afford the special assessment. And that's what it's doing. It's putting everybody else's property in jeopardy because 1 or 2 or 3 people can't come up with the money. The point is, let's live below our means. Let's purchase places we can afford. There's lots of really, really good. I was talking to a new employee today, relatively new. We hired him a couple weeks ago. And he told me about how he likes to listen to Dave Ramsey's podcast. And I love that. A lot of people really dislike Dave Ramsey, but he's got good advice. He gets you started at the right place, right? And once you master those things that he's talking about, then you can start looking at taking on good debt and being crafty with stuff. But the reality is, it's important for us to be financially responsible. And how does it apply to HOAs? It's because the whole community depends on your financial responsibility, right? And at some point, you're gonna end up, if you're not being financially responsible, if you're not taking time to educate yourself on financial responsibility and not getting into debt and being good with money and being wise with money and saving for the future and all these basic concepts that unfortunately we're not taught in school. And that's a larger problem with society and economics today that we're not gonna get into. But the onus is on you. The accountability is on you and me to go educate ourselves and learn how to manage money appropriately so that we can have a place to live, so that we can maintain our place to live, so that we don't have to put other people in this position where they have to feel bad because we don't have the money to live up to the obligations that we agreed to. And when you purchase a property in HOA, there's obligations that you've agreed to. You've agreed to uphold the declaration. You've agreed to uphold the rules and regulations of that association and live by the bylaws. You've made a commitment to your neighbors to maintain your unit in a specific fashion. And you've made a commitment to your neighbors that you are going to have the money and that everybody's gonna have the money to pitch in to these common expenses and basic maintenance that is required so that you can all maintain the property and live there for an indefinite amount of time. And that when you're ready to retire or sell it and move somewhere else, that your property is gonna be worth as much or more as the day you bought it. And that your neighbor's property is gonna be worth as much or more as the day they bought it. It's a team. And the team's only as strong as its weakest link. I mean, that's been played out, right? but it's true. So don't be the weak link. Find a way, right? I know times are hard. I know the economy's hard. You know, what it takes to survive in today's day and age is not what it took 20, 30 years ago. And I understand that a lot of people just want to work their 9 to 5 and watch TV every night after they come home from work. I get that. But it's getting harder and harder to live that way in today's economy. And that's just a reality of life. However you figure it out is not my responsibility, right? We're all responsible for our own finances and figuring out how we make our lives work. And my job's not to tell you how to live your life. I work very, very hard. I work a lot of hours so that I can live a life where I don't have to stress about money all the time. And I save and I try to pay cash and I don't take on loans, right? And I educate myself. In my free time, I'm not watching TV. I'm listening to books and podcasts to learn how to be better with money so I can do okay. And over the last 5 years or 10 years, my life looks completely different because I've taken the time to do that. Hey guys, I came across a video by Alex Hormozi. I was right about to post this and this video came up on my personal YouTube feed. And for those of you who don't know, I'm a big fan of Alex Hormozi. I consider him kind of like a business mentor to me, even though I've never met the guy. I've read his books and I follow his content. I followed him for years. And he's got a tremendous amount of really good stuff. So if you don't know who he is, follow him. If you are struggling with money at all, or any of this stuff is kind of rubbing you the wrong way, the stuff I'm talking about in this video, check out Alex's video. It's called Brutally Honest Advice for Broke People. I'm gonna try to link it in a card up here, and if not, I will leave a link below. But Alex is tremendous. He has a lot of really good stuff and content that he makes and talks about money, finance, and business. And I really recommend that everybody watch this video because it's super important. All right, thanks guys. Now back to my video, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks. My point is, however you do it is your business. But when it comes down to coming up with the money so that we can all live in this community together, and so that we can all pay for the necessary maintenance and upkeep that we all agreed to when we moved into this community, as the property manager, that's a me problem. As the board of directors, that's a me problem. I've got to make sure that everybody's paying in what needs to be paid in so we can all live in this place and it can look good and it can stay for years to come. How you come up with that money is a you problem. That's your business. I'm not telling you how to do it. I can share with you how I did it. I'm just here to tell you that going to your board or going to your management company and saying, I don't have the money for this increase in dues, it is not a viable solution. I'm sorry, it's math. It's not a subjective thing. This is how much things cost. This is how much we need to put away. It's percentages and ratios and fractions. That's it. I'm sorry, but that's the voice I have to be. And that's the person I have to be to do the duty that I'm hired to do for my clients. So that's my PSA for today. Went a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but I think it's really important. And a lot of people who live in HOAs need to hear that. And it's not that I'm not empathetic to everybody's situation. It's that everybody needs to find a living situation that is in line with what their finances can afford. That's all I got. If you like this, you thought it was good, consider liking and subscribing. If you didn't like this, which it's very possible you didn't because what I'm talking about is not popular, then feel free to leave a comment. Tell me I'm out of touch or insensitive or whatever the case is. Engage in some way, shape, or form. That's what we're here for. And thank you for taking the time to listen to this and watch this. And we'll catch you next time. This is the HOA Crusade. We'll catch you next time. Thanks again. This is Jared with HOA Crusades. We'll talk to you later.